How well do you know your Bible, and which Bible do you read? The King James Version of the Bible has been distributed worldwide, containing a total of 66 books. What if I told you that this Bible is actually not complete? The real Bible actually contains a total of 88 books. This brings me to another question. What's the oldest organized Christian body in the world? To put it simply, what do you consider the original Christian church? Most people would say it's the Catholic ministry. However, that's not really true. Long before the Catholic ministry was founded, there was another church body known as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The problem is you've likely not seen the Ethiopian Bible before. Maybe you haven't even heard of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. That's because leaders and people with power have been banning this Bible from the public. The Bible that we know today comes from the King James Version. Books have been removed from the Bible, and this raises the question, why was the Ethiopian Bible banned, and why was so much of this Bible removed? Ethiopia is a country on the far eastern side of the African continent. It's often said to lie in the Horn of Africa, sharing borders with Kenya, South Sudan, Somalia, and Djibouti. While you may have heard of Ethiopia before, there are secrets and things that many don't know about. For example, did you know that the Queen of Sheba and Solomon had a child together? Yes, I'm referring to Solomon, whom you read about in the Bible. They called their son Menelik I. The area of Ethiopia started to embrace Christianity by the year 330. That means this religion has been celebrated and worshipped by Ethiopians for almost 2,000 years. In fact, Christianity already existed in Ethiopia when Europeans began to colonize African countries and bring their version of religion into this area of the world. What's also interesting is the fact that Ethiopia remained the only country on the African continent to be independent during the colonization of Africa. All other areas of Africa were overtaken and colonized by white people from Europe. However, we're not here to talk about the colonization of Africa. We're also not here to talk about how Europeans enslaved Black people in Africa. In this video, I want to focus on the Bible. To be more specific, I'm going to guide you through the Ethiopian Bible and show you some of the major differences when compared to the modern-day Bible that colonists decided to distribute. We're also going to consider the main reasons why those in power have banned the Ethiopian Bible. This was often the way to keep control in their hands by spreading their own version of what they wanted the Bible to look like. Africa as a continent is filled with wonders and secrets, especially when you're trying to discover more about where we came from as humans. However, within this continent, or I can even go as far to say the entire world, Ethiopia is one area that we need to focus on more. Some of the oldest human specimens in the forms of bones have been discovered in Ethiopia. These fossil remains have played a really important part in helping researchers better understand where we come from and how humans have evolved over millions of years. One of the most famous ones would be Lucy. Discovered in 1974 at Hadar, Don Johansen was able to recover pieces of ribs, the pelvis bones, and a few pieces of spine, alongside an arm bone and a thigh bone. The skeleton was codenamed Lucy, but is officially recognized as AL288-1.
The discovery that could change how we think about human evolution, an almost complete skull found in Ethiopia that's 3.8 million years old.
Among hominid fossils found worldwide, Lucy has become one of the most famous. The bones were classified as a type of Australopithecus afarensis. The paleoanthropologist was able to date these bones back to about 3.8 million years. The thing about these fossils is that they give us traces of the earliest forms of the modern human. What does this mean? Some experts believe that this is the evidence we need to understand where we really come from. And considering how far back these fossils date, according to experts, humans originated in Ethiopia when you take a look at these findings. The question now is, where exactly does the Bible fit into the picture? If you haven't heard of the Ethiopian Bible yet, then you're in for quite a few surprises. I'm going to take a closer look at this holy book. You'll also learn more about why it has been banned in so many parts of the world. The Ethiopian Bible is also known as the Orthodox Tewahedo Bible. Even though it's been banned in some areas of the world, it's still widely used by two specific churches. This includes the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church and the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. While some scriptures state that the Ethiopian Bible contains 81 books, there are actually 88 in total. Over the years, many people in power have taken steps to reduce knowledge of these books that are missing in the Bible we tend to use in the Western world. However, as more research goes into this, people are starting to realize the truth behind the lies we've been told for a long time. First, let's talk about the books that have been removed from the Ethiopian Bible to create the modern version of this Christian book. These are books like the Book of Enoch. There are also the books of 1st Esdras and 2nd Esdras, as well as Jubilees. The Ethiopian Bible also contains the books of Judith, Sirach, Tobit, Maccabean, and Baruch. In this Bible, you'll also come across the letter of Jeremiah, the wisdom of Solomon, and the additions to Esther. Chances are some of these names are quite new to you. As you can see, some of the books that are part of the Western Bible have additions to them, such as the Book of Esther. However, one interesting thing is the way people tend to describe this. Remember, the Bible we know today is actually derived mainly from the Ethiopian Bible. So if that's the case, why would the Ethiopic Bible contain additions to books that we see in our Bibles? The truth is, it's the other way around. The common Bible that you'll find in your local bookstore today contains books with content that has been removed from the original text. What you need to understand here is that Christian bodies generally aim to ban the use of the Ethiopian Bible. They want to ensure followers of Christian churches in Western countries all follow the same Bible. The question is, why are they so afraid of the books and texts that were removed from the Ethiopian Bible, especially when you consider the fact that this is the oldest and most complete Bible in the world? So let's take a look at the reasons why the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible was banned and what exactly it reveals. First, it's important that we explore the reasons that Christian bodies give us when we ask them why these books are not included in the modern-day Bible. One of the most common answers would be the fact that the extra books are considered pseudo-epigraphs. This basically means that they consider these books to contain false information. There are different ways to actually explain what a pseudo-epigraph is. The point here, however, is to understand the excuses that have been used for a very long time to tell us why we don't see things like the Book of Enoch or the 3 books of Maccabee in the common Bible we can buy at a store today. To understand where all this originated from, we need to travel back in time. It's commonly accepted that Hebrew was the initial language in which the books of the Bible were written. These texts were later translated into other languages. However, during the 1st century, several books popped up describing the life of Jesus. These books provided details on Jesus' teachings and the messages he brought us when he roamed the earth. This led to many false books being distributed throughout various communities. The Bible as we know it now wasn't a complete book. Instead, there were separate books that later on became the Holy Bible. As so many of these false books started to surface, leaders of the Christian church decided to come together in the year 325 AD. They met up again in 381 AD when they made some decisions. One of the most important decisions made during these meetings was related to how they would decide what was considered a scripture. The focus was to ensure texts would only be considered scriptures if a follower of Jesus wrote them. Someone who saw the teachings of Jesus would also be considered a follower, and thus their work would be scripture. The Bibles that we can buy today generally focus on the King James Version, sometimes abbreviated as the KJV. There have been newer translations made of the Bible, but this particular version had the biggest impact and quickly became a widely accepted Bible that Christians relied on. You see, King James decided that he wanted to create one version of the Bible that people would be able to accept. However, the version of the Bible that King James wanted was to ensure his vision of religion could be put into words and to stop the differences that were currently being faced within the Christian religion. At the same time, King James wanted to create a version of the Bible that would essentially help to reassert the level of power he had over people. He decided to gather priests and experts who then spent 7 years in separate groups. Each group worked on a specific area of the Vulgate, which was the original collection of Bible books. This happened in the 1600s, and when these experts were done with their work, King James decided to publish his version of the Bible. It was first published in the year 1611 and quickly made its way to many parts of the world. The King James Version of the Bible made sure that several of the books that were part of what can be considered the original Bible would be removed. It only kept the parts of the Bible or the specific books that made sense to have for King James. At this point, there are 2 important things that we need to consider. First, there is the fact that many books related to Jesus surfaced in the 1st century. Many of them were considered false. We can compare them to what we call fan fiction in the modern day. Christian bodies and leaders generally use this as the reason why they don't use the Ethiopian Bible. By including stories that are considered false, they will be spreading details about the Bible that aren't true. However, we also have to consider the fact that King James decided to make changes to the Bible according to his own version. There might have been a couple of books out there that people brought out without actually knowing Jesus. One thing that we shouldn't overlook here is the fact that many of the books in the Bible don't focus solely on Jesus. Many books actually tell tales of God and followers who believed and worshiped this higher power. What this could mean is that King James didn't only remove false books from the Bible, but also anything he deemed inappropriate for his version of Christianity. And with this type of move, he likely removed essential details from the Bible, books that tell us the truth behind many questions that Christians tend to have. These are also the books that could make Christians question the current order and organization of Christianity and churches within this religion. So one reason they may tell you is because they believe some of the work in the complete Bible could be false. However, we need to dig a little deeper to really understand what's going on. First, let's take a closer look at a portrait of Mary and Jesus as painted by Ethiopians. And now, let's consider a painting that represents St. George. What do these two paintings have in common? If you take a quick look, you'll quickly notice that these figures from the Bible are drawn with dark skin. Now, head over to a Catholic church in Europe or really any part of the Western world. Take a look around you and see if you can find a picture of Jesus. You'll likely find that the way these churches paint a picture of Jesus is completely different from the two paintings we just looked at. In Catholic churches, you're going to find paintings of Jesus that portray him as a white man with fair skin. He has brown hair that's usually about shoulder length. Jesus hasn't always been portrayed as being white. In several countries, there are still paintings and works that show Jesus with dark skin. However, these are countries that Europe didn't invade and colonize. The impact of white people from the European continent has created a shift in how people viewed Christianity. Something that you do need to keep in mind here is that white people came from Europe, headed to Africa, and enslaved black people on this continent. The hard truth behind all of this is that Europe's white population started to take over. They took black Africans from their homes and enslaved them, who then ended up in the Americas and Europe. As Europeans began to colonize Africa, they also brought with them their own Christian beliefs. These beliefs included the depiction of a white Jesus. Of course, to have a white Jesus, they also made Maria and other people who were generally mentioned in the Bible white. Consider the fact that these white Europeans had a very important goal in mind. They were painting a picture where whites were superior to blacks. That explains the entire slavery movement. So to further assert the dominance of the white man, they've brought paintings and portraits of biblical characters who are white. While they've succeeded in painting this picture for a large part of Africa, one area that wasn't affected by the way Europeans tried to change how they saw religion was Ethiopia. Even today, you can walk into an Ethiopian Orthodox church and see paintings of Jesus and other biblical figures, all with dark skin. So this brings us to the second reason why the Catholic Church and several other Christian leaders are trying to hide the truth from us, and why they are banning the Ethiopian Bible and stating that the true Bible is the one that has been derived from the King James versions. When Christian leaders have been telling us that Jesus was white for hundreds of years, then why would they suddenly change their opinion and admit to what we're starting to uncover? This is the irony of the story. Ethiopia holds many truths when you take a look at the Bible that still remains in its original form. However, European Christian leaders would not admit to the truths hidden in this Bible, but rather continue to focus on how their ancestors invaded the lands of others and painted a picture of Christianity being white. Now, something that you need to understand is we're not saying Jesus was born in Ethiopia. The story of Jesus' birth remains one that takes place in the holy city of Jerusalem. This holds true even in the Ethiopian Bible. We're also not saying that Jesus was Ethiopian. No, we're pointing out the fact that Christian leaders, including the Catholic Christian bodies, have been hiding important pieces of the Bible from us. They've been telling us lies about why they're not included in the Bible we can access in the modern day. When you look at things this way, it becomes clear that one of the most important reasons they refuse to admit the truths behind these books is because of the things they revealed. You could say that Christian leaders maintain the modern day Bible as if it were to continue the purpose that King James had when he created his version of this holy book. Remember what I said before. King James had the Bible reconstructed to reinforce the power he held, while also ensuring what he deemed appropriate would be included in the modern version of the book. There are also several questions that the books found in the Ethiopian Bible answer. These are questions that we don't get answers for when looking at the standard Bible we have in the Western world. To get a better idea of what I mean, let's dive a little deeper into what these missing books cover. The Book of Jubilees covers factors from the creation of everything up until the story of Moses. It also goes into detail about Adam and Eve's children, and in one part provides more insight into the story of Noah and his wife Imzara. is part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a series of texts that were found in the Dead Sea many years ago.
Ranging in size from these little fragments that you have to try to cobble together to glean any meaning from, to partially complete scrolls where you get a sense.
It is said that these scrolls were likely hidden when King James wanted the priests and experts who worked on his version of the Bible to command them to destroy the scrolls that he didn't deem fitting. While these scrolls were found, not enough text could be recovered to form complete books. The closest to a complete book that we can see today is in the Ethiopian Bible. A significant focus is placed on Israel in the Book of Jubilees. There are parts in this book that also shed more light on African Americans. This has even led to the creation of special edition Bibles that add some context to this book. However, even these Bibles focus on the KJV version of the book, which means it doesn't share everything that you find in the original Ethiopian Bible. Apart from this book, as I've mentioned, several other ones were removed. When it comes to the Ethiopian Bible, it's not just about the book itself. There are even scriptures in Ethiopia that you've never seen before. Scriptures that tell us more details about important parts of the Bible, but that were never deemed appropriate to be included in the modern Bible. On the subject of portraying biblical characters as white, this actually brings up another reason why they're banning the Ethiopian Bible. As I mentioned earlier, white Europeans came to Africa and started to colonize many parts, except Ethiopia, of course. Now, the Catholic Church has special requirements for the inclusion of a book in the Bible. One of these requirements mentions that the writer of the book needs to be apostolic. This means that the writer should be related to the apostles and with a large focus on one pope in particular, who was known as St. Peter. Similar to Jesus, St. Peter has been portrayed as a white man by Europeans. They've painted this picture of a white St. Peter. It's important to note that St. Peter's family originated in Galilee, an area in Israel. This would mean that even though many Catholic scriptures tell us that St. Peter had fair, almost white skin, it's unlikely that this is the case. He was likely an Israelite, which means he had darker skin. If you head over to the Ethiopian Bible, you'll clearly see that many of these figures that the Catholic Church tells us were pale skinned or white are depicted as actually having dark skin. Now, you have to consider the fact that Christianity as a religion existed in Ethiopia long before Europe started to invade and colonize the African continent. It could even be that the Ethiopian Bible existed long before the creation of the European Bible. So, to answer the main question, why did they ban the Ethiopian Bible? There are actually many truths when it comes to answering this question. Control and power are two of the most important things that we shouldn't overlook when it comes to assessing the Ethiopian Bible. Books were removed and only scriptures that King James deemed appropriate were kept in the KJV of the Holy Book. And as white supremacy ruled in Europe, especially with the invasion of black parts of the world, these people created their own versions of Jesus and other biblical figures. To cover this up and retain white supremacy through religion, the Catholic Church and several other church bodies ruled by white popes banned the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible to keep the truth hidden. The truth is that those people we've come to believe were white actually had darker skin. The Bible as we know it might not be a lie, but it certainly doesn't tell us all we need to know. With Christian leaders banning the original and most complete Bible, which comes from Ethiopia, there's a lot that we still need to learn. Even though this Bible is still used in Ethiopia, it's uncommon to see it in other parts of the world. When you take a closer look at pictures, fossil remains, and the Ethiopian Bible, all originating from this African country, you start to realize that things might not be as they seem. We've been fed the details that white leaders all over the world want us to believe. We haven't been told the whole truth, as those books were removed from the Bible to make sure European Christian leaders and several other people in power can manipulate our thoughts about Christianity. This video showed you that it's time we opened our eyes. We need to seek out the truth and ask essential questions. Why were there so many books removed from the Ethiopian Bible when these scriptures were introduced to the Western world? Why weren't other African countries given the Ethiopian Bible when white Europeans started to colonize this continent? And why is it that the only country in Africa that was able to remain independent and free from colonization happened to be Ethiopia? One of the most shocking truths that white Christian leaders are trying to hide is related to who Jesus and other people in the Bible were. We often see these people portrayed as white, but considering where they lived during the times mentioned in the Bible, it's unlikely that this is true. Ethiopian drawings generally showcase people like Mother Mary, as well as Christ himself, with dark skin. While many modern churches would admit not accepting the Ethiopian Bible, they would usually pin the reason down to pseudo-epigraphs. They claim that some of the texts in the Ethiopian Bible were written by people who didn't have any direct relation to what they wrote about. It's similar to comparing it to fan fiction in some ways. However, we shouldn't let the excuses of white Christian leaders sway us from the path of discovering the truth about our own people, the origins of man, and what the Bible really says. Have you heard of the Ethiopian Bible before? Maybe you've already done some research on it. Did you know that it was banned for the reasons I talked about in this video? Be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications for my channel to keep up with the latest Black Culture Unlocked content.